How's that? That's a bit better.
Yeah, that is actually better. So nice to speak to you. Where are you now? Did you leave, or are you still there?
No, I'm still here. I'm in Ukraine. I'm in a town called Vinnytsia, which is sort of slap bang right in the middle of Ukraine. Um, and just, yeah, on the road, been pretty non-stop, going from town to town, trying to cover as many different stories as possible from different locations. So yeah, it's been a bit full on. Haven't, according to my Apple Health app, I've had like 3 hours and 54 minutes average sleep a night. But I think it's definitely been more than that. But yeah, so yeah, it's been good.
Well, my first question for you is, how are you? How are you doing personally?
I'm good. I love I love my, the expense of sounding a bit like a knob. Like I love my job, and being here, it gets me very excited. It makes me feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. And despite the lack of sleep and everything, I'm happy, and I'm sort of motivated, and and it feels good. I mean, obviously there have been moments here where it's been very difficult, especially crossing the border from Poland into Ukraine. I don't know if you saw the news, but that was a real, really tricky, basically, to put it lightly. Um, there's thousands of people trying to cross. There was a 40-kilometer queue of cars, and at that point, I crossed over. I had my all my gear in I have like a rucksack bag for my cameras and my camera gear, and then I have my sort of clothes and my helmet and my flak jacket in another bag on my back, my camera gear on my front, and you couldn't get a ride or anything from the actual border to Lviv, which was the next town I was trying to get to, which is about an hour and a half drive away. You couldn't get a lift, you couldn't get anything, and there's thousands of people. So I had to walk for an hour or so just with all this kit
Hmm.
on me. Couldn't find a lift. It got dark, it got cold, it was snowing, and I was sort of standing on the side of the road. I thought maybe I'd have to ask some nice Ukrainian family who were trying to get into Poland, who were waiting in this traffic queue, which was again like 40 kilometers long. Sorry, 40 kilometers long. If I could sleep in their car with them for the night. And at that point, I sort of was thinking like, right, this should I be here? Is it the right time? Do I have enough work lined up? Am I making the right decision? Just when you're hungry and you're tired and you're like, wow. And I was like, and this is day one. But luckily, my colleague of mine, who is the most resourceful journalist and incredible person who I'm traveling with, she got here a day before me, and she and her translator, they managed to persuade a really nice policeman to
Oh
pick me
wow.
up and drive me the hour and a half journey to Lviv in the police car. I
Wow.
don't know how she did that or how they did that, but it was. Like they saved my life almost in a way, because I was, contemplating camping out or trying to get into someone's car and sleep there for the night.
Wow.
So that
Okay.
was tough, but on the whole, I'm doing good. Yeah, yeah, no, I'm doing all right.
So
Probably lost.
rough start, but you're feeling purposeful.
Yeah, I would say exactly that. It was a rough start, and now I'm feeling good. I've been doing work that I believe in. Probably haven't been eating enough, but I'm feeling good. Yeah.
Well, actually, that goes into a question that one of my readers has, which is, how do you take care of yourself emotionally and mentally during this period, and especially after the work is done? So I imagine you're shooting all day, but once it gets dark, you have to go inside. And what do you do then to take care of yourself?
It's a really good question, because I mean, in general, when I'm on, if, for example, when I was in Afghanistan, or if I live in Lebanon, I live in Beirut, and so on tough days there, or in Afghanistan, I would come home, have a drink, do all the usual things, have a drink, try and read, just sleep, chat to friends. Chatting to friends is always a really good one, just getting out of your head. But here, I'm working on my own stuff and working for the National, as well as being a cameraman for a Latin American
Video.
production company. Yeah, so I'm doing video stuff as well. So I'm doing writing, photos, and video at the moment, which is
Hmm.
intense. Problem with that, though, is the time difference. So we do our last live sometimes at 2 a.m. and we're up really early. So right now I haven't really had any downtime to relax. We're in bed at like around like, sorry, it's a lot of noise.
Sorry.
Around 2 a.m. Maybe around, and then we're up again early. So what I've been doing is, chatting to my friend Belle and chatting to the Spanish journalist that we're traveling with as well. Just trying to relax, make jokes. You can't buy any alcohol here because alcohol sales are banned in wartime. So we kind of have a cup of tea, have a cigarette, have a little chat. Maybe I'll read the news. And by that point, you were so tired that you kind of just fall asleep. So I think looking after yourself on the ground while you're working is tough. The important part of that question, I guess, is how do you do it afterwards? And for me, all the usual things like running. Running is really important. And I know a lot of other like photojournalists, like Lindsay Adario, like she's obsessed with running. She tries to run even when she's in the field. Going to the gym, hiking. I'm very lucky that in Lebanon, it's a very beautiful country and the hiking and the mountains are great. I love surfing. Actually, for me, surfing is a really important thing. Being in the ocean, I like sailing and surfing. So I will, and there's, if you're surfing, you can't have any electronics with you. If you're running or you're cycling or going to the gym, you can be attached to the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Surfing, there's no electronics. It's just the water. And I find that to be very kind of soul cleansing and meditative, if that's the word. I can kind of meditate out there on my board and meditating as well. That, and I think just relaxing, drinking some red wine with some friends and chatting. I'm very lucky right now. My friends whose children are my godchildren. They send me like videos of their kids being silly, and like that sort of stuff is really, really nice to kind of see. Just to remind you, like, that life goes on, and there's like people trying to potty train their kids in other parts of the world. Like it's all good, in that sense.
Yeah.
It's not all good, but it reminds you that, there are nice things going on somewhere else.
Right. Something to look forward to in a sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of went into this a little bit already. What does your workflow look like there? And now you're doing 3 things, so that's already different too. But I imagine if you were just doing photography, is it shoot all day, then get back when it's dark, edit, upload, that kind of stuff? Or is it throughout the day you're uploading directly from the camera, things like that?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I guess it depends on what's happened that day. If there has been, for example, like the shelling in Pin that we've seen, I think that really reactive kind of photography, you need to be filing just straight away. So I've got a couple of image licensing agencies, one in the UK, one in the Middle East. Well, it's called Middle East Images. I think that's actually based in New York. So you could FTP transfer straight from camera. Sometimes I do that, or I'll send the image to my phone and email it using the Wi-Fi connection. I use 2 Canon 5D Mark IVs for my stills. So if it needs to be quick, I'll do it like that. Maybe give it, and then very luckily, like the guy who runs the image licensing agency in the UK, he might give it a little edit and get the image. So I just have to send the raw, or not even. Sometimes I send the JPEG. Sorry, can't send the raw. Send the JPEG. They'll send out. If it's not a day like that, what I would tend to do is shoot all day, get back, and then edit on Lightroom. Obviously, there are rules in photojournalism. You can't edit too much. You can crop, you can change a little bit here and there. I don't shoot for Reuters or for Getty, so I'm a bit more free to do it. And I think my style is not that kind of wires style. So yeah, I have a bit more creative freedom in a way, but I just don't believe in changing imagery too much. I come from a film background. I can see your Pentax on the shelf behind.
Yeah, very good.
Real nice.
Yeah.
And so for me, I try and do as much as I can in camera. And so that I've got very little that I have to do once I put it into the editing software.
What is the connection that your camera has to be able to send the photo directly to your client? Is it goes, okay, you're tethering to your phone then.
So yeah, so I can connect the Canon, yeah, the 5D. You can connect to your phone and use the phone's sort of internet, and then that connects. Those two connect through Wi-Fi, I think. And so yeah, and then you have options to send, FTP straight to an FTP box, or I can send it to my phone, and then I will, using like the Canon app or one of those apps, and then I will email it straight from my phone. That's how I get connected to the wider world with my
And there's
camera.
always a strong enough connection for you to be able to do that when you're in the field, or not necessarily.
No, that's the trouble in Paradise. Really, you're only able to do that if you've got the connection,
Mm.
and the Canon app is a bit clunky and it'll sometimes disconnect. I shoot on two bodies. I'll have like, I try not to shoot on a lens longer than, I mean, the longest lens I've got a 24 to 70 zoom, which I sometimes use. But usually I try and shoot on a 50 and a 35 fixed lens. And so it's about, a great Spanish photojournalist called Diego. He's a friend of mine in Beirut. He was sort of saying like, don't have the zoom lens, just move your feet. You've got to keep moving and keep getting that shot. And he's right. I mean, I've definitely missed shots because I don't have like the 70 to 200, which is the staple lens. So because I got two bodies, it can then be hard to connect to the phone because you can only really kind of connect one at a time, as far as I know. So it's a real pain. So sometimes just for ease, I will put on my 24 to 70 on one of the bodies. I'll connect that to the phone and work as I can like that.
When you're
I have a separate dongle.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying I have a separate little dongle, like Wi-Fi dongle, which you can just put in your back pocket and connect with that instead of the phone to save battery on your phone.
Oh yeah.
But classically, I forgot to bring that. I forgot to bring that to Ukraine. So, yeah.
Oh no.
I packed very last minute. The invasion started, and I was in Beirut, and I think I was on plane the next morning. I actually planned to go that night, but I had laptop issues that need to be fixed. So I sort of packed very quickly and forgot some stuff.
Wow, okay, that's too bad. While you're shooting, while you're out there, are you able to think in technical terms and consider things like composition and framing, or are you just focused on, okay, this is an important moment, I need to capture this?
I think originally it'll be like, this is the moment, this is the action, this is what I need to get. And then as soon as my eye is looking down the viewfinder, it's all about composition, lighting, where the light's coming from, if it's not, all frame rate, all these things. I do try and think about once I'm looking down the viewfinder. But when I'm just looking around, I'm looking for the action, I'm looking for that shot. For me as well, it's like a really good way of kind of battling the fear, if there is any, or any nerves. You just concentrate on the job in hand, concentrate on that frame, on the composition, and then you're not thinking about, the bullets or the whatever it is flying around. So it's important to kind of keep your head in that kind of technical place at times. That's how that's the order it kind of goes for me. It's like, what's the action? What's that image? And then I'm in the camera, and how am I framing that? And how am I shooting it?
That's actually a perfect segue to the next question, which was all about, like, do you get scared while you're working, and are you able to turn that off, or how do you deal with that? But I guess what you're saying is purely focusing on the work removes the emotional fear bit for yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone gets nervous, and you should. If you're not getting nervous, you're either like you're mental or you're in the wrong job. Like I think there is a healthy amount of fear. You need that adrenaline to focus. You need to plan. You need to be able to do like real-time risk assessments. And so that nerves can help with that. I think there's a difference between getting nervous and being, terrified or afraid and being physically frozen. That is dangerous. I don't get too scared. I think relatively, I think a lot of the people in this job probably don't get as scared as other people might. I certainly don't, because I I concentrate on the wider job in hand of, you know, telling these stories or getting a message out, documenting an event. And then I think, you know, the sort of more micro job in hand of what's the frame, what do I need to get, and what do I need to tell this story. And so concentrating on those things definitely helps negate any fear. But yeah, I mean, I definitely get a bit scared, but probably not as scared as I should.
How do you manage your feelings of empathy for people that you encounter in the field while also trying to make sure you get your job done?
That's a really good question. Me personally, you know, I'm quite sensitive to people's feelings. I really love people and how they work. That's kind of why I do this job. And I, you know, I'm aware of people, of surroundings, of mood, and I think that's what makes me good at my job. But it also can be a bit of a gift and a curse, because sometimes it's hard to stay objective, stay impartial. You know, there've been some times here where, you know, you're talking to people and they're breaking down crying, and you just got to keep rolling. You've got to get that shot. You've got to get right in someone's face as they're crying, trying to cross a river or a border, and it's cold, and you should. And I'll get that shot. I'll always get the shot and then give them my hand and help them. I always try and do both, you know. And at the end of the day, we are human beings. Like anyone who's crying, I've hugged a lot of people here, and I've wanted to cry myself. But I think for me, doing that doesn't help them necessarily at first. I think if you can get the message out and you can get that image or that video or that piece of story, if you can get that out, you will get that quote. I mean, get that image out, or get the image, and then give them a hug, then help as you can in a human sense, then you're doing them a service as well. If you're just standing there crying because you feel sad for them and sad for the situation, then you're not helping anyone. You know? But it's hard to drop, but you kind of have to maybe be a bit cold and professional at first. You have to, for your own sanity and for the job, for the sake of the job.
In a moment like that, where you might take the photo and give someone a hug or help them up a bridge or something, do you feel like you're being a witness to a conflict, or on some level a participant?
I guess by the nature of being here, you are a participant. I mean, you're not really, I don't know, that's a good one. You're not really participating in it. I feel like a witness. I feel like, you know, quote unquote, I'm bearing witness. I'm trying to tell stories. I don't feel like a participant, as I'm not actively picking up a gun. I'm not actively involved in any kind of conflict. I feel like a witness, and I feel like, gosh, that's a good question. I guess, you know, you could argue, but by being here when you don't need to be here, and by getting some of these images out, you are a participant completely. Maybe this is being seen in certain parts of the world, and influencing policy change or, you know, decision making, which you would hope it would, but it could also be that in a negative way. For example, if Russia were seeing something and then decided, or, you know, you've got to be careful about the pictures you take and geolocation. If it's recognizable objects, you know, that it's not going to cause a strike on that area. So in those ways, you're a participant, and in other ways you aren't. But for me, myself, I don't see myself as a participant. I see myself as a witness and someone who's there to tell a story and then help if I can. And if I should.
Have you ever been in a situation where you wish you would have intervened or taken action rather than document the moment? Or has it always been kind of fluid where you're able to do both?
So far, and I haven't had a huge amount of experience in conflict. So far, no, I've been lucky. There hasn't been a moment where I've felt like I needed to intervene before getting an image, or sometimes even intervening after I've got an image. These moments are so frenetic and fluid and kinetic, and there's oftentimes a lot of other people there whose job it is to help, or you know, a train. You know, I've had my training and I've had my first aid training, but there's situations where medics or soldiers or police, someone who probably is better qualified to help, will be there. For me, so far, luckily. So that hasn't come up yet. Luckily I haven't felt like I should have intervened before taking an image. Not yet. And at the end of the day, I have a job. I'm here to do a job. And so, yeah, I think that's important. I mean, the other day, for example, I was running to a air raid shelter with this old woman next to me, and I was shooting videos, so it's a bit easier. But I was sort of shooting her running as I was running. But I put my hand on her back. I led her and pointed her to the closest air raid shelter, where I saw a woman like waving, and we went there together. And I made sure she was all right. And then I ran off and followed my colleagues. Like that, I guess, sort of stuff happens. But again, I was filming at the same time, so I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
No, I mean, I imagine it's quite a complex question to answer in the middle of all of this anyway.
No, I mean, I think it's the ethics question, and when you help and when you intervene is such a massive question in photography and journalism, photojournalism. And I think it's an ongoing debate. It's a very interesting one to have. It's a big question. I don't know if we could ever end talking about that, really.
Probably not. I guess that question addresses the safety or well-being of others. If we flip it, have there been times where you've consciously decided between your own safety and getting a photo that you can recall?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely been a bit more reckless than, I don't know, I have a habit of sort of being a bit less worried about danger than maybe I should. So yeah, I've definitely run into certain scenes, maybe without the proper equipment, or maybe getting a bit close to something that maybe I didn't necessarily need to do. I mean, yeah, I have done that. There was an occasion in Beirut during a protest where there's this amazing moment where a young woman was sort of with her gas mask on, had an empty big water gallon, drum for a water machine, and she was banging it and walking towards this line of riot police, and there was no one else there. It was just her and the police, and I was like, this is an amazing shot. And so ran out to get behind her to get this shot. No one else there. And a riot policeman fired a tear gas canister at me.
Oh.
Not into the air, not on the ground, like at me. And at first I was like, that must be a mistake. And then in hindsight, I realized there was no mistake. There was no one else there. And he fired it at me, and it hit the ground in front of me, bounced up, tried to sort of jump out of the way, and it hit me. And then it exploded at my feet, and the gas came out and the sparks, and I kind of didn't get the shot. And then I ran off back to where a lot of the press were, and I sort of realized all the press were like behind this wall together, kind of laughing at the fact that I'd gone and done that. And I was like, right, I can see now why they were all there and I was out there on my own. Maybe that wasn't the best idea, and I don't think I even got the image. So there've been times like that where you're like, oh my God, that's a shot, before you think about what's around. And I sometimes need to think a bit quicker or do a bit more of a kind of on the spot analysis before running out.
Right.
But yeah, it's been sometimes like that.
Have you had moments where, perhaps even right now in Ukraine, where people were upset with you taking photos? And obviously, I'm not talking about Russians, but like people that are just on the ground.
Yes, of course, definitely. I mean, in Ukraine itself, no, I think people here really want their stories told and this story told, because the rest of the world is not coming to their aid in the way they would want. They've given arms and they've given weapons, but they haven't put boots on the ground. They haven't closed the skies. NATO is, I don't really know what NATO is doing, but so they want their story told. I think they feel that this is quite a good weapon, the media. Mm-hmm. Zelensky's been great about talking to other governments and posting videos of himself. So no, I've had no one here. In fact, everyone's been very kind, very accommodating, very welcoming, especially with the work. I took some photos of people queuing in this 40-kilometer line in their cars and waiting, and and they've been waiting a long time. They've been traveling for days. They were hungry and tired. And I took some imagery. And I always try and sort of get a kind of permission first. You know, I'll point at my camera. I'll give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And sometimes, or if people say no, I'll just walk away and I'll try and get that image. But I took an image and some guys shouted at me like, you know, are you going to pay me for that? When you get paid, am I going to get paid? Which is pretty standard. And how I deal with that is, instead of just like putting your head down and running off, I'll just walk directly at them, put my hand out, shake their hand, tell them who I am, where I'm from, and try and break that moment. In Lebanon, I got punched in the face. Image. There'd been petrol and gas was very hard to get hold of in Lebanon. It still is, because of the economic crisis. And so someone had been hoarding petrol up in the north. Some people had found out, local sort of people in the village and in town, come to like get the petrol from this one person, and the man who'd been hoarding it, his son, I don't know how, but there's a big crowd there. I guess it was getting violent. He shot his gun and he somehow managed to shoot the petrol tanker, or the tank where the petrol stored, and it blew up and it killed and, you know, maimed and burnt a lot of people. And when we heard about it happen in the night, with some colleagues, we got up, we got a car, we got there first thing in the morning, and angry people who lived in the town, angry villagers, came to the home of the guy who'd been storing the tanker and basically threw rocks at it and burnt it down. They burnt his house down. And I ran in with a couple of weeks into this melee of, you know, angry men, like trying to burn this house down. The army were there, kind of not really doing anything. I was taking photos, and one guy came over and grabbed my cameras and was, you know, in Arabic, saying, you know, what are you doing? He asked me, he thought I was maybe Secret Service or something. It was all very intense in the moment, shouting at me. And I said, look, okay, halas, you know, stop, I'm enough. And as I was about to walk away, this other guy just came over and smacked me in the face. And my COVID mask flew off, and I just like, okay, okay. And I just walked away, and I walked past the army, and they were just laughing. And one of them shouts, "Welcome to Lebanon!" And it was quite a funny moment in the end. And after that, I was back away from the house on the road, and funny enough, the guy who hit me, he had a T-shirt wrapped around his face at the time. And he took that off, and he came walking over to me. And I remember thinking, right, here we go again. And I kind of squared up and walked towards him, trying to like fight fire with fire. But he just started laughing, and he grabbed my hand, and he was like, I'm sorry. And he used to like hit his own face with my hand. It's like, hey, you've got me back kind of thing. And we just laughed about it. And that's all you can do. It happens. This is an occupational hazard.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. What have you learned about yourself through the mirror of conflict?
I think I've learned that my fear threshold is much, maybe higher or lower. I'm not sure how that metric works, but than I thought it was. I'm way less scared than I thought I was. I'm much more resourceful. I've grown in confidence in my abilities and my judgment. And sort of, I think I would say that I'm relatively brave, like most journalists and photojournalists in these situations are, and I'm proud of that. And my tolerance of bullshit, I guess, has been lowered, which is maybe not such a great thing. Sometimes when you're talking, and it's a kind of cliche, but sometimes when you're back home and you're talking about the color of someone's curtains that they want to buy, like I don't want to sit and talk about peach curtains and shit like that anymore. There's certain stuff that I've learned, a kind of confidence, being brave, and a slight intolerance for crap, basically.
Now that makes me wonder, what were you doing before you were doing conflict photography? Were you doing another kind of photography? How did you get into this kind of photography?
Well, I had always been, like most, I think, photographers, been obsessed with it from a young age. And I started in film, and that age-old story of like, my grandfather gave me my first camera, like that's what happened. And I just took photos always. I'd always have like one of those disposable cameras with a flash. At parties, I was always taking photos of my friends out and about. I always had a camera, and then I just loved traveling to weird or far-flung places, and I would take photos there always. And then I got into kind of like headshots and fashion photography a little bit. Never loved that, but it was a good way to pay the bills. And that was very brief, the fashion thing, before going more into kind of documentary photography, and then stepping into photojournalism and sort of journalism. I did an MA at the London College of Communication in photojournalism, documentary photography. I actually did that relatively recently. I kind of went back to study while I was still working at the same time. So yeah, that was kind of my routine through like mates parties, fashion, headshots, and then into photojournalism.
And for the most part, that was in London, and then you eventually moved to Lebanon?
Yeah, London, the headshots and fashion stuff was all London. And then I did some work in Ghana, and then I moved to Lebanon from London.
And what prompted that move? Was it because Lebanon had a lot going on that you wanted to document, or was there another reason?
A friend of mine worked for the UN, and I went to visit him back in 2014 with his brother, who's also a friend of mine. And I kind of I fell in love with Lebanon, but I've always been really interested in the Arab world. I studied Arabic at SOAS, and it's just always been a fascination to me. I mean, when I was at school, 9/11 happened. The sort of war on terror was the news. Second Gulf War, before that, these were images and things that I sort of grew up with. And my parents were big travelers. My mum was a bit of a sort of aging hippie, and we traveled to really interesting places. And so for me, the move to Lebanon felt inevitable in a way. I always wanted to go. I was telling my friends, I'm going to move there. I will move there. And it was really expensive. Lebanon used to be super expensive. Rent was the same as London.
Oh.
But eventually I kind of, like anything, you just have to make that choice. You just have to bite the bullet and go. And for me, it was a very quick decision. I was like, right, fuck it, I'm going. And I just jumped on a plane there, like about a week or two after the decision. And I've been there ever since, really. But I love Lebanon, and I love the people, and I love the region as a whole. I love the food. Yeah.
Cool. When you think about the work that you've done so far, both in Lebanon and in Ukraine, was there any unexpected evidence that your work made a difference, either at a micro level or at a macro level, where you felt like, oh, this photo, etc.?
It's really interesting. I don't know, when you're kind of at my level, which is low, I'm not kind of Tyler Hicks or Lindsay Daria or Paula Bronstein or whoever, like it's hard to know. It's hard to see the end result. I've seen my imagery in magazines or in newspapers. I guess I don't have any direct story where I know that it's made a difference. Not yet. I'd hope that it has, and I'm sure it has in some way. People have thanked me for the story or the photo I've taken. Maybe even just thank me just for being there, or just for being here and doing what I'm doing. So in that way, you feel like, yes, this could make a difference. This could make a difference, or this is having an effect in real time or for this person. As far as like my imagery or my words affecting policy or affecting decision making, I haven't seen any direct evidence of that yet.
Well, I guess if people are thinking, even the subjects being grateful for their story being told, that's a micro level, impact, I would say.
Exactly. So I feel like also, if my answers are really long, which I feel like
that's totally fine. It's a conversation.
Okay, cool. So in that respect, I think you're right. And I think we all hope that our imagery will end up in textbooks one day. Will be looked at in school when talking about historical events. I think that would be great. But as far as direct action. I think the closest thing I've got is, and arguably the best thing is just someone in real time saying thank you. I mean, what more do you need, really? That's why we do
Right.
it.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, even as a non-conflict photographer, I can get emotional over someone being grateful that I'm helping them tell their story, you know? On a just regular documentarian level, that's already moving to me.
Yeah, your stuff is great. So like that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Um, what role does social media play in your day to day right now? Is that something that you see as part of your job, or is it kind of like an unpaid extra that you do to increase the impact that you're making in terms of like spreading the word about what's going on in Ukraine?
it's all those things. Unfortunately, I mean, I hate social media. I hate the fact that I'm glued to my phone 24/7, especially now in Ukraine. But it is an invaluable tool. And you know, especially as an image maker, you cannot be not all over Instagram. When you're looking for info as a journalist, Twitter is incredible. It's an amazing resource. So yeah, for me at the moment, I'm attached to my phone all the time. And you need to put your stuff out on the internet, on social media, because you want people to see it, and that is the quickest way to get a lot of people seeing the stories, seeing what's happening here. Of course, you don't get paid, but it does lead to maybe other jobs or interviews or connecting with other journalists, other documentarians. So it's an incredible tool, and I hate it and love it in equal measure. For me, you know, like the downtime is, funny enough, trying to switch my phone off or step away from my phone and just step away from that, because right now it's all consuming. You know, and I don't make any money from Instagram. I don't know any people who do, unless you're kind of like an influencer selling
Right.
cheaply made handbags, or whatever it is. You know, I don't know, but you know, you do get jobs or inquiries from it, and it's an incredibly useful tool. It's just a shame that it has a lot of negative effects as well, to do with narcissism and body image, and I think values placed in the wrong area, priorities get skewed. But as much damage as it does, I think it has a lot of, there's a certain power to it for a good positive change.
Do you think it's different for you, who you're working in a very freelance kind of way, whereas let's say Lindsay Odario is clearly there for the Times? Does that role difference play a part in how social media is used by different kinds of photographers? Like, do you have any of your clients, do they have any rules for like, don't post this before you upload it to our thing, or like how does that work?
I think for me, I do, you know, I will always send, you know, you're getting paid by a certain company, for example. So I'll always file my video, my images, and my words to whoever it is I'm working for before I post that imagery online. If it's a video I've taken on my phone, I might put that straight up.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something I've taken on my professional cameras, I will usually give it to the news outlet first. And once they've decided which images they're going to use and what they're going to put up, I will then post it and kind of promote it myself.
Gotcha.
Usually in that order, just because of copyright and you're being paid, you're doing a job for someone, you know, and they may want to promote something in a certain way first, which I think is fair enough.
Yeah, totally. My last question for you is, what's your plan now? Like, how, you know, we obviously don't know how long this war is going to go on. Is it your plan to stay there kind of indefinitely until this is over, or is there a certain amount of time that your client has you there? How does that work for you?
Well, I mean, I think I have no idea when it's going to end. I think it could go on for quite a long time. Is the feeling I get while being here. For me personally, I have to be back in Lebanon in kind of mid to end of April, around that time, because I need to renew my work visa and my residency. So unfortunately, that is something that I have to get back for, which means I have to leave here in about a month or so at the latest. I will probably go and do that, depending how long it takes, and then come back. My plan now is to stay here, keep moving, and keep documenting for as long as I can, and do as much as I can. Obviously, that depends on the security situation here and what happens. There are a lot of journalists have pulled back west to Lviv. We're still going east, and we're stopping in towns along the way. So I want to keep doing that, but basically keep doing it until I can't do it anymore.
Right. And I guess a little follow up to that is once you're back in Lebanon and you have to deal with real life adult stuff like work permits and leases and things like that. What is that transition like after living so in the moment through work in Ukraine, and then suddenly you're back in like regular life?
Interestingly, it just, what you realize is life goes on. It never stops. As much as you're here and you're working hard, you're trying to stay focused, and you want everything else to pause in your life. You just want this to be the thing. It doesn't work like that. I got a leak in my roof and so I've had to and I've got a leak in my bathroom. So I've had to got like friends who are trying to help me, who've got spare keys or who are staying there, who trying to help me sort these leaks out. And so I'm literally like texting builders or plumbers or friends about a leak as I've got my jacket and my helmet on and I'm on the way to cover like a bombed school. When I was trying to cross into Afghanistan, when it fell to the Taliban in August and September, I was going through 9 Taliban checkpoints, and again I had it's always a leak. I always have like a leak in my roof every time I go to the conflict zone. It's mad, and I was trying to deal with that as I was driving to. So these things that interestingly, they ground you as well. They remind you that life goes on and that you have shit to deal with and mortgages to pay and bills to deal with, and you just have to. I'm really lucky. I've got great friends and a great support network of mates who have helped me and have been incredibly kind and patient by trying to help me out with these things while I'm away. But at the end of the day, like you're on your phone, you can usually text or message anyone or email, and it can be sorted. But it's really fucking stressful when you like got someone telling you that your roof's about to cave in and there's water coming into your bedroom, and you're trying to go through your 7th Taliban checkpoint and sort it out. It's just like mental.
Right.
Life goes on.
And then when you get home, is there a certain, I guess, almost like a letdown, like less adrenaline rushing adjustment that you have to make because suddenly you're not constantly moving, you're just in your house, still dealing with that leak, but not dealing with Taliban.
Yeah, my mind becomes quite restless. It is in general. Yeah, sleeping gets a bit harder because you're still up there, but you're physically in a situation that's down here. So it takes a while for that to readjust. So it takes me a while to sleep. I get up, I find I've got lots of things to do. I procrastinate with the work I should be doing, and suddenly, I'll pay bills or I'll go and fix a cupboard handle. I'll do all those things that you do when you're procrastinating and not doing the work you should be doing. So yeah, I do suddenly find myself doing. I write lists of stuff that I need, while I've been away, stuff that's happened, that bills that need to be paid, or work that needs to be done, invoices that need to be sent. I'll write that list, then just try and like get through that list when I get back. Again, I'll probably like drink a whole bottle of red wine as well as soon as I get back, and like try and pass out and go running. But yeah, it's the adjustment from one to the other is a really interesting adjustment, and I think all the journalists are still trying to get on top of that. There's no quick, easy way of coming down or sorting your head out. People have had real issues because of this, and so I think it's important. I've got in contact with therapists recently just to have someone to talk to. I think looking after your mental health is incredibly important, and we've seen what happens to people who don't in this industry, and it's very sad. So yeah.
Can you, just for people who don't know that, can you talk about that a little bit, like what has happened to some other people?
Well, you have what's his name? Kevin. Like my brain.
It doesn't have to be specific people either. Just like kind of like what are things that people deal with in this business?
Well, so there's this. story of a South African photographer, famous story. He took a photo of a vulture kind of standing over this young child who was malnourished and starving on the edge of an IDP camp. And that image haunted him for a long time. He got a bit of trouble. You can Google it. I can't remember his name. It's Kevin something. And that image haunted him. He got a lot of heat because the people were like, why didn't you help the child? And I think the child was actually quite far away. He had a long lens. The child, I think, was okay in the end. It's not like the vulture, attacked the child, but it stuck with him, and he ended up committing suicide. And I know that people, post-traumatic stress disorder is a real thing, and people have to be medicated, and people don't sleep, and it can cause depression and very high anxiety, and you need to stay on top of it because you see and deal with things which are obviously incredibly intense. And sometimes it's quite insidious the way it gets into your mind. You won't think about it for years or days, and then you'll burst into tears in the middle of the supermarket aisle or something. You'll hear something, you'll smell something, you'll see something that reminds you of something. And you have to be aware of the danger. I would argue that the mental health dangers in this job are probably higher and worse than the physical dangers. The physical cost obviously is very high. You could die, you could lose a limb, but those small drip of the mental health issues that can be caused by what you see and do is a dangerous thing, and you need to sort of be aware of it. So yeah.
And so you said you're speaking with a therapist, which I do too. I think that's great for everyone, but especially in a situation like this. Is that something that you're able to do while you're also there, or is it after when you get back?
It'll be after when I spoke to therapists in the past, stopped for a while, and then have been in contact with them again recently. And it's something I'll do when I get back home. There's just no time, unfortunately. In fact, I need to run now.
No, this is good. Yeah.
But yeah, there's no time. I would love. I mean, it'd be incredible if you once a week you could sort of sit down for an hour with a therapist while you're out here. I'm sure there are journalists who do find time to do that.
That might be texting with the therapist, or WhatsApp little messages. Who knows?
For me, chatting with mates, voice notes with mates, or having a quick conversation with mates does the world of good. So if it's not, they're my therapists in the field, and then when I get home, I'll talk to a professional.
A professional, yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time. I hope when you get back in April that there's no leaks and you get your big bottle of wine and you get back to running. And then until then, you stay safe and feel fulfillment from your work as well.
It's been great to chat to you. Thank you very much.
It was great to chat to you. And have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.